The rain poured down in heavy sheets that Tuesday night, turning the streets of São Paulo into dangerous rivers that swallowed the weakest of cars. Through the drops pounding against the windshield of his 2003 Casa, Roberto Mas could barely make out the road ahead. At 42, he carried the weight of fatherhood alone, raising two small children while working as a mechanic at a workshop in the Peña district. That night he was returning late, after yet another exhausting workday, trying to piece together a life that always seemed to be on the verge of collapse. He could never have imagined that an unexpected stop along the Tite Expressway would change not only his fate but also that of one of the most powerful women in Brazil. When Roberto noticed a black Mercedes-Benz pulled over with its hazard lights on, his first instinct was to keep driving. After all, whoever owned such a car could surely handle any problem, couldn't they? But something in the hunched figure standing beside the vehicle made him slow down. It was a woman, alone, in the pouring rain. Even from a distance he could see that she was shivering not only from the cold but from despair. Roberto knew that feeling all too well, being lost in this world, not knowing where to run when everything around you seemed to be falling apart. Without thinking twice, he stopped his modest car near the luxury vehicle and stepped out into the storm. "Senora, are you all right?" Those were the mechanic's first words as he approached the fragile figure, so starkly contrasted with the grandeur of the car. Her name was Elena, though Roberto didn't yet know it. She lifted her face, wet with tears mixed with rain. At 58, she ran the country's largest automobile empire, a company employing more than 50,000 people and moving billions each year. But at that moment, standing before a punctured tire and the inner emptiness that had gnawed at her soul for decades, she was just a lost woman in need of help. I don't know what to do anymore," Elena whispered. And Roberto's heart ached as he knelt on the soaked asphalt, inspecting the damaged tire. Elena watched silently as this man, with his calloused hands, didn't hesitate to dirty his only shirt to help a stranger. She had spent the last 30 years building a business empire after her husband's early death, sacrificing relationships, moments with her children, and even her own happiness in exchange for financial success. That evening, returning from yet another business meeting that had stretched into the night, Elena asked herself, had it been worth trading love for power, warmth for cold numbers in a bank account? Beside her stood Roberto, a man who clearly had little, yet seemed willing to give everything just to help someone he didn't even know. "All done, Doña Elena. The wheel is replaced," Roberto said after 20 minutes, drenched to the bone, his hands smeared with oil. "Senora, you should be able to get home safely now." Elena was surprised to hear him speak her name. He had seen it on the driver's license she had dropped in a puddle. But what touched her even more was the genuine concern in the eyes of this simple man, who had no idea who she really was. "How can I thank you?" she asked, pulling money from her wallet. Roberto smiled and shook his head. "No need, Doña Elena. Life is hard enough for all of us. When we can help, we just help, that's all." And in that moment, without realizing it, Roberto planted a seed in Elena's heart that would change not only their lives but also the fate of thousands of others. What happened in the days following that rainy night became a story of transformation, gratitude, and how a simple act of kindness can rewrite the path of two lives that had seemed destined never to cross again. The next morning brought a soft light, in sharp contrast to the storm of the night before. Roberto woke at 5 a.m., as he had done for nearly 10 years since becoming a single father. An alarm was no longer needed, his body was used to rising early to prepare breakfast for his children before heading to the workshop. While heating milk in an old pot his mother had given him, the image of the woman from last night returned. In her eyes had been a deep sorrow, something far beyond a flat tire. Roberto knew that sorrow. He had seen it in his own reflection on the day his wife left, leaving behind only a note and their two small children. Into the kitchen shuffled Luana, 8 years old, and Miguel, 6, with messy hair and sleepy eyes. "Papa, you came home late last night," Luana, the more observant of the two, said. "We waited to watch a movie with you, but we fell asleep on the couch." Roberto felt that familiar ache in his chest, the guilt that always haunted him when he couldn't be there the way he wished. "Forgive me, my princess." Papa was helping someone who needed help. He served them warm milk, kissed each on the forehead, and silently promised himself that one day things would change, that they would have more time together. On the way to school, Miguel clutched his hand tightly. "Papa, Why do you always help everyone, even people we don't know? The question caught Roberto off guard. How could he explain to a 6-year-old that helping others was what kept his faith in humanity alive? You see, Miguel, sometimes people go through struggles we can't see. And when we help them, even if they're strangers, we make the world a little kinder. Miguel nodded seriously, as if he understood. Like when you help me with my homework, even when you're tired. Roberto smiled, his heart warmed. Exactly, champion. Meanwhile, about 30 kilometers away, Elena was waking in her 1,000 square meter villa in Granja Viana. Yet the emptiness was the same. The vast house with 6 bedrooms and perfectly manicured gardens was filled with silence, a life built solely on work. She breakfasted alone, as she had for years, flipping through financial reports on her mahogany table. But her thoughts were far from the numbers. Again and again she returned to the image of Roberto, kneeling in the rain, staining his clothes to help a stranger. When was the last time someone had done something selfless for her? She walked into her home office, its walls lined with diplomas, awards, photographs with politicians and at factory inaugurations. But among all these symbols of success, her eyes were drawn to just one photograph, over 20 years old, she and her husband with their children on a picnic. In that picture, she was still smiling, truly smiling. Eduardo, she whispered, brushing her fingers across the glass frame. What would you have done in my place? How did I become a stranger to myself? A phone call interrupted her thoughts. It was Marcos, her 28-year-old son, living in New York and working as a corporate lawyer. Mom, I got the quarterly report. The numbers, as always, are impressive. Congratulations. His voice was professional, cold, as though he were speaking to a business partner. Marcos, how are you? How are things with you? Elena tried to sound warmer, like a mother, but even her attempt felt forced. I'm fine, Mom. Focused on work, like you always taught me. I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Gotta go. The line went dead. Elena was left holding the receiver, crushed by a void that no millions could fill. 3 days passed, but Roberto didn't leave her mind. In meetings, while reviewing multi-million-dollar deals, she found herself thinking about the simple man who had knelt in the rain for her. That gesture had awakened something in her, something forgotten for decades. The memory of true kindness, free of interest. Elena, always attentive to details, made a decision that would change everything. She would find out who Roberto was, and why his act had touched her so deeply. And so began the unraveling of 2 worlds, one forged in wealth and loneliness, the other in hardship and love.